Hello. This is great. So we have 14 people logged on Zoom. I'm going to give you an idea of what we have going on in the building right now. We have board members David Miskovic, Walter Blos, Fred, Mr. Larry Weinberg on the end, who we will talk to and about later in this meeting, and Mr. Kevin Boyle online via Zoom. And this is our small but mighty crew of residents in the actual real life building. So if the next meeting you feel so compelled, you can come down and join us here, see the beautiful beach, to see that it's still buzzing at 7 o'clock. So welcome to the Resident Advisory Board July 14th meeting for Beaver Dam Lake. Call to order at 7:03. All righty. Do I have Pledge of Allegiance? Ready? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. All right. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
A motion to adopt the agenda. Second.
Dave, Wally seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Beautiful. I see Kevin. Awesome. Okay. So we have a packed agenda tonight because we've had a ton of resident questions, and I think what we're going to talk about is going to answer a lot of those questions. So the first is obviously our dam project update, which we start with every time. So the DPW is working with CBI to close out the remaining punch list items. So one of those punch list items is the electrical setup of the sluice gate controls. So since the last meeting, progress has not been made here, and CBI will not receive payment until this is complete. So that's still in progress. Signage was added to the dam on both sides, asking people not to trespass there. There's a 100-foot exclusion zone where you shouldn't drive your boat or your kayak or your float or your body up to the dam, 100 feet around it. So the board one of our action items is to reestablish the buoys 100 feet away from the dam to prevent boats from getting too close, to protect our beautiful new investment. So stay away from the dam. It's not safe. And it's marked out pretty clearly on the signage. So stay tuned for the buoys being included at the dam site. Does anyone have anything to add about the dam project update?
I was out there with the fire department, and there were three of us, nobody saw any signs.
Okay.
Keeping a distance, on the water side.
Okay, so we're actually going to address the firefighters coming later, and I can show you some photos of the signage also.
I'll show you pictures. We'll take it. We'll show you pictures. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're definitely there.
But thank you.
Yeah, thank you. What I might highlight too is that they're not appropriately displayed where people can see them. Yeah. They're definitely there. Thank you for that.
Okay, so we need to make sure that the signage is clear and obvious, and that the buoys are placed so that we can highlight that exclusion zone by the dam. Okay, so administrative. So we have had a seat on the board open in our Cornwall area of our lake since the December election, so starting in January. And we have a fantastic community volunteer, Mr. Larry Weinberg, who is interested in joining the board. So after a little, well, Larry, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. Can I be heard from this distance?
I hope, can someone give me a thumbs up if you can hear Larry? Beautiful, Molly can hear you, go ahead.
Okay. Larry Weinberg, I've lived in Beaver Dam for 16 years, moved here in 2005. Raised my children here. I'm an empty nest. I have my girlfriend Christina and I. We live on the lake on Shore Drive. A nice piece of property, a small home that I take a lot of pride in trying to upkeep. And when I was told there was an opportunity to join the board, I was very excited about it. I think that a lot of great things have been happening over the last couple of years. You can definitely feel the vibe. It's excellent. It feels like we're really building a nice community here. And I just love to be part of that, add value And, whatever we all decide as a team, I'm happy to jump on board and pitch a hand, and I'm here. So I congratulate the new board that we have for all the great things they've been doing and all these real nice improvements. Nothing negative against anything in the past, but certainly we've been immersed in a lot more communication and a lot of really positive things happening. What better than to have a great community feel where you feel like you actually have a hometown, and I'm really looking forward to adding value.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So with that, I would like to know if anyone would like to, so the board is permitted by the bylaws to appoint if nobody runs for the seat. So nobody ran for that seat in Cornwall. So what will happen is, if the board is so pleased to do so, is we will nominate and appoint Larry as the representative for Cornwall to the Resident Advisory Board. And then that seat will be up for election in December. Okay, so do I have a motion to appoint Larry? Wiley makes a motion. Fred, do you second?
Yep.
Fred seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Beautiful. Okay. Welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard.
We're so excited to have a 7th member to our circus.
Get the t-shirt.
Again, Larry opted to try it before you can buy it, and we look forward to the next few months. Awesome. So just to make a mention, the board is working with DPW on a revision of the bylaws this year, just to make some much needed updates. The last time they were updated was the early 90s, so much has changed since then. So we are looking forward to making some changes to those things. Stay tuned. If you have any suggestions or specific requests that should be considered, you can always email them to bdlboard@gmail.com.
One other note on that, Eric. If you haven't looked at the bylaws or not familiar with the bylaws, go into the Orange County DPW website and at Beaver Dam and open up the bylaws and read through them. There's a lot in there. It's really worthwhile to take a look at.
That being said, we're going to go through the website a little bit later, because I'm going to show you where a couple of things are that you're able to access, including the YouTube channel from that site, parking permits, and all of the district bylaws, information about the dam project, all of those things on the county website, which is a very seldom used resource, I think. So we're going to go through that, but thank you very much. You may have noticed that we had the Salisbury Mills Fire Department on the lake this past weekend. So thank you so much. They were conducting drills on the lake to practice search and rescue procedures. So we hope that we never have to utilize those skills, but we're very excited that that they have them. And they will be back on July 20th to complete that process. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Just administrative. If for any reason I need to leave the meeting early, I'm going to give a nod. I'm going to politely exit safely.
I'm going to throw him under the bus. Wally might become a granddad during this board meeting. So if he has to step out.
Been in process for a couple hours. So.
Been in process for a couple of hours. So we hope that Wally has to excuse himself from this meeting for the sake of his grandbaby. Alrighty, so the next item is the beach and the lifeguards. So thank you so much for your patience as we went through the stages of opening the beach. We now have 5 lifeguards on staff, oriented and working, who will be with us for the summer, some of whom live here in Beaver Dam Lake. They're all awesome and amazing. So if any of their parents or maybe themselves are on, so we're excited to have them. We're very grateful that they're here. The hours of the beach are currently 11 to 7 every day, but we are looking to expand to 8 p.m. and weekend mornings open at 9 a.m. So stay tuned. Right now it's still 11 to 7 every day, but we want to expand the hours where we can because people have said that that's what they want. So we want to make it as usable as possible. The floating mats are in and they're being enjoyed by all. I think there was probably 15 kids out there half an hour ago on the floating mats, really enjoying them. So we're really excited to see people down using the beach, using the mats, and taking advantage of our awesome lifeguards. A couple reminders with the beach though. When you arrive at the beach, number one, you have to come onto the property. You can't take a kayak, a boat, a tube, or swim up to the swim area. You have to actually come in through the reserve. And the reason that you can't have a kayak or a boat or a tube or anything like that around the swim area is the Department of Health regulation. If there's boats within 50 feet of our swim area, we could be dinged by the Department of Health. So it's not just a random rule that we made up. We're bound to that. So, and it also keeps our swimmers safe. And so that's that. When you come, you have to sign in using the resident binder. There's a big yellow binder. You can't miss it. There's a big sign next to it. We want residents to sign in. We have a bicycle rack. So we've had a lot of teenagers, preteens coming down during the week using the bicycle rack here on Reserve 4. Love it. Happy to see it in use. If any of those kiddos belong to you, make sure you have them sign in. Also, we're going to mention it to them next time that we see them. And we'll get into parking passes a little bit later. You do not need a pass to go on the beach, but you do need a parking permit to park your vehicle at any of the reserves, including the beach. So I'm going to show you in a moment, and we're going to talk about parking permits separately, but just to address, you don't need a specific beach pass, but you do need to sign in and you need a parking permit. We had a resident complaint that some of the kiddos were down here using profanity, some of the older ones. So if the lifeguards hear it, they're going to warn you. And then if you do it again, they're going to ask you to leave. If you're curious about any other rules and regulations on our beach, that beautiful yellow sign-in binder when you arrive has all of the rules and regulations in the first 2 pages. So you can take a look at them when you come down. Again, boats and kayaks, you can't boat or kayak within 50 feet of the swim area. Before I move on to parking and boat permits, does anyone have anything to add about beach and lifeguard?
Yeah, just to clarify now, it is a DOH regulation regarding staying 50 feet outside the perimeter of the swim area. Is there adequate signage on the outside so voters are aware of that? I can't remember seeing it.
Yeah, there is where you would come up to the shore. There's a sign on the shore saying that you can't dock, boat, or fish at the reserve.
On the outside of the perimeter, because we went by the kayaks, you can see, clearly see the perimeter of the swimming area, but there's no signage pointing outwards to people. So if there's an option to just have some floated thing added into the little piece.
Okay, there is a sign that's floating out there that does, I think, say
All the way at the end
the
there.
green signage, so maybe we can put something on the other side of that to make it more obvious.
Double-sided.
Let's take an action, give it to neighbors to go around and make sure that it's very clear that.
Okay. So Wally plans to
Ensure the signage is appropriate
Ensure the
to warn
signage.
boats.
swim area, thank you. Okay, awesome. All right, so moving on to parking and boat permits. A reminder, you must have a parking sticker to park at the beach and any other reserve. We've been talking about this for months now. I know it's Mr. Fred's favorite topic in the whole wide world. I'm going to show you, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show you again how to get to it. Here's my little thing. Here we go. You can Google Beaver Dam, Lake Orange County, New York, and this is the first thing that's going to pop up. Otherwise, I'll put the link in the chat box for you. This is our website. So a couple of things you can get to on our website. Right here, resident permit program. Give it a click, and it brings you to, slowly, of course, because we're in the building. This link here will bring you to the permits. Here we go. So the application and all of the policies around it. Also, if you are looking for it, this will take you to all the YouTube recordings of the meetings that we have had in 2020. Our email address is listed. You can see all of our names. What was the other thing we talked about before? So you can see all the studies and report on, the past vegetation stuff. All of those things are available right here on our website. So that's where you can access it. And I will put a link in the chat box. Hang on 1 second. I will put a link in the chat box so that you can easily find it and apply for the permit. That being said, putting a link in the chat box right now. That being said, despite the fact that we have been asking for a really long time for people to get their permits, now that the beach is open, everybody realizes that they don't have one. So we do have hard copies of the permits in the info box outside of the community building door. Because when you hand them back, you are handing them back with a lot of private information on them, your address and different proofs of where you live. We ask that please don't just drop them in the community building when we are not here. Do not hand them to a lifeguard. Don't try to put them somewhere creative. We really try to keep them all together. Fred has a system. He's being inundated right now because everybody wants to use the beach. So he's getting way more per day than he has historically ever gotten before, which is great. We want people to get them, but either mail them back in.
We're up to date so far.
We're up to date so far. So
Great
he
job,
is live with the number of permits that we have been issuing. That being said, either mail them back in the way that it's written on the application and the address is written and the instructions for how to mail them back in are there, do it. Or your other option, Fred has offered very generously to come down in person on July 26th and July 27th from 6:30 to 7:30 at night. So you can come, hand in your parking passes in person, or hand in your application in person and get your parking passes during that time. So if you're a person that really wants to drop it off live, July 26th, July 27th, thank you guys, 6:30 to 7 o'clock. Otherwise, you can just mail it in if you're not available during that time.
Erica, may I?
Yes, you may.
Again, same thing I had before. That one of the things, and I guess it's not highlighted enough on the application, that you really need to enclose copies of the DMV registrations for your vehicles, because we don't want to be giving out stickers to somebody that's from Chicago or something like that, or for their family members. So trust me, just bring it in, show it to me, and if it's been printed, I'm going to shred it, so it's not going to be held on to. But we have to have registration copies to be seen for each vehicle.
Is this a sticker that goes on your car? Is it removable? Where is it to be put?
It's supposed to be on the rear. The most common place is the rear left side bottom of the rear window. Put it on your bumper if you wish, as long as it's on the back of the car. And the reason for that is when the police do their rounds, they can see people that do not have the stickers. And that's when some interesting things happen, especially at night. So again, and they're not removable. The only thing we ask is if you sell the car, trade it in or whatever, you scrape it off. This way, anybody can buy the car with a sticker. So if you would do that, then we appreciate it. You don't have to return it, just get rid of it.
So they're bright orange stickers. You can't miss them, and we try to make
And
it
they're
really
good
easy.
until 2022.
Yes, they're good
Through
until
22.
they're good until 2022, and it is the same sticker that was used since 2017. So if you already have bright orange stickers, you don't need to reapply for them. They're already on your car. And so DMV vehicle registrations is what he's missing on a lot of them, and then he has to chase people down, and it's just really inconvenient. So make sure you include them. And please note, you can't park your cars overnight at any of the reserves anyway. Even if you have a sticker, you can't park your car overnight at any of the reserves. I get a lot of calls concerning trespassing. I get a ton of emails. Hey guys, I get a ton of emails concerning trespassing. People are worried that, non-residents are putting their boats in the lake and they're parking on the reserves and they're fishing there and they're doing all these things, right? So if we don't know who does live here, we can't know who does not live here. So the number one thing that we can do to prevent trespassing is getting your parking permits, and it's the same application for parking in both. So we make it as easy as possible. Fred's really designed a great application, so it's not so bad. So please, especially if you're concerned about trespassing and it ticks you off that people are using your paid for resources, best thing that you can do is sticker your stuff so that we know who does and doesn't live here. So far, board members have been politely offering verbal warnings because we know that it's a little bit of a scramble to get these things in all of a sudden. And we would rather spend our time doing just about anything else than trying to gently police the neighborhood. So please get your stickers, because eventually cops are able to ticket your cars and you'll be subject to the fines associated with that. So get them in, get them done, please. And obey the posted signage. So if you are not a resident, if you don't have a sticker, or if you're not using that reserve, don't park on it. I think that's pretty clear. So the board is also in the process of working with DPW to have unregistered boats removed from the reserves if owners don't claim them and get permitted stickers on them. So there are some boats that I think have been abandoned since the lake was full the last time that people maybe didn't get new stickers for, or haven't used yet. So go down there, touch base with your boat, get a new sticker on it if you're still using it, because we want to make sure that there's not abandoned materials and there's space for people who are going to put their stuff down there and use it, and everything is on the up and up. Do you have anything to add to that?
I call that a privilege to be able to leave your property in one of these reserves. So if you own a boat and you want to keep it, follow the process, and that way we can keep things clean and tight for the rest of the folks. But for those people who live on the lake directly, we don't have to deal with that because we already have our own access. But I would look at that as being an extra privilege to be able to leave instead of having to have a car to cart the thing over, and then the lake is almost unusable for folks. So take advantage of that gracious opportunity to have your boat left here, but just follow the rules, that's all.
What kind of time frame are we looking at? What should we establish as a cutoff point?
I would say get it done in the next 30 days, and then we'll look at the next board meeting as to what our next steps are going to be around.
Can I add one more thing, Erica?
Sure.
One of the reasons, and I've said this before, that people say, well, why do I need a sticker for my boat? Well, Erica just brought up one of the reasons that if you're going to put it on the reserves, it's got to be registered. But there's been instances in the past where we're seeing the boat floating along the lake, and we have no idea whose it is. If it's registered, if it has a sticker, we can trace it almost immediately as to who the owner is and contact them. Say, you got a boat missing, So that's for your own benefit more than anything else.
Okay, two things to add. One is related to the stickers on your vehicles. First of all, don't take it the wrong way. If a board member or anybody else comes up to you and asks you for a sticker of your car, we're doing that for one of the primary reasons, to maintain the safety of the area. And every resident here in your tax bill pays money to be a resident of Beaver Dam Lake. So we're doing this to protect your ownership, if you will, within the lake, not to challenge you on the sticker. We're just making sure that the people coming here are actually residents of Beaver Dam. So don't take it the wrong way if we ask you for a sticker. Next part of the boats, I actually personally walk down all the areas, and if I go up to Reserve 3, I guess it is, there's probably 20 boats in there. Out of that 20, probably 17 do not have stickers on them. Some of them have weeds grown in. It looks like they've been growing for about 7 years. Some of them have holes going through them. It's just litter right now on the reserves. So we are going to start taking steps proactively to identify the owners, locate the owners. If you want to bring your boat into compliance, get a sticker on it, that's great. If you don't, we're going to work with the DPW and follow the protocols, but most likely involve identify those boats, chain up the boats, and they'll be locked up. If you come to us, we'll take the chain off. If you don't come to us within 30 days after we chain, the boat will probably be disposed of or removed.
Okay.
Okay.
Get your stickers. And if you see other people who don't have their stickers, you should mention to them how easy it is to get their stickers, and you can refer them to the YouTube video of this so that they can know how to do that, or our website. Next reminder, dogs on the reserves. Unless it's a service dog, it's not allowed on the reserves. I've received a couple emails asking about this rule. I think people just want to have their dogs be able to swim. They're not allowed on the reserves. I hate to say this, but I'm going to. One resident brought their dog down to the beach at night one night, let it off the lead. It went to the bathroom all over the place. It was neither the lifeguard and the board members' pleasure nor privilege to pick up after their dog on the beach where our kids play. So we were able to identify who that was, and we're going to talk to them. But just so you know, Reserve 4 is monitored by cameras, and Local Law 8 of 1991, which is a county law, does subject you to a $500 fine per incident. So please don't take your dog on the reserves and pick up after your animal because it's gross. Anything to add on that?
Yeah, Erica has a great way of softening the tone on things. She does a great job of that. I'm just the extreme opposite. It was not my privilege to be able to pick up the dog poop that the individual did leave on right next to the sand where the kids were playing. The kids could have stepped in. It was there for about 4 or 5 hours. I think it was incredibly inconsiderate of the resident to do that. He obviously knew his dog did that and didn't take action to clean it up. And we'll be getting in touch with you.
And also, the area is under video surveillance. So if anybody decides to bring their dog down here, they will be recorded. So don't do it.
We'd like to think that it would be every reserve that would be
I know.
the overall consensus, not just because obviously we're monitored here, but
Agreed.
Again, we all live here. We all want to be clean, sanitary. So let's just follow the process of protocol.
Thank you. All right, so those are all of my Nagy reminders over the last month of questions and things that have come up. So let's move on to some of the things that we have that are moving in positive directions and a lot of the resident questions that have been asked about our lake that we have had back starting March 23rd. So the last meeting that we had in June, I believe, was the first day the lake was fully filled. So it has only been a month since we have had all of our water back. So I really appreciate your patience as we work through some of the things that we need to do for our lake. So I am going to turn it over to.
And Erica was behind a lot of that, obviously. So thank you so much for doing that.
And I'm going to turn it over to Walter Bloss, who has invested an incredible amount of time into the Lake Health Committee to give us some fantastic updates. So
I'm going to turn it over to Tom Coral.
Do you want to take center stage?
Don't have the right day.
He's my mentor, by the way. For the Lake Health Committee, you got to think in buckets, if you will. So I'm going to talk about one of the buckets, which is vegetation removal, which is basically the floating mats that are out there, the floating vegetation that's going around, and also the rooted vegetation. So let's think of phase 1 and phase 2. That's organic material that's floating around. It's out there. When that decomposes, it goes back into the water column and eventually contributes to the excess nitrogen and phosphorus, which results in algae blooms or HABs, which results in our lake shutting down. So we don't want to get there. So the phase 1, we're dealing with the floating vegetation. Everybody has seen that. They're the huge floating mats that have been going around the lake, and they're actually starting to diminish. They're probably, what you see right now is probably about 80% less than what it was when this all started. We wanted to take proactive steps to be able to get that debris removed. We worked with the DPW. We actually went out for bid. So right now the contract is complete pending verification of insurance documents with the company. The company will be Solitude. The original plan was to actually have them out here today to drop off their equipment, and then they were going to be doing the work on Thursday and Friday. We talked to DPW earlier this week just to dot the I's and cross the T's. There was one more insurance document that they didn't have, so it's going to go back out to them one more time. My understanding as of today, that last insurance document is complete. We did request the company Solitude to come up and do a pre-job visit and a walk down, if you will, of the lake. So we're going to have a very limited time with them, which is a limited scope, which is about 2 days. So we have to be as incredibly proficient as we possibly can. So with that visit, we basically toured the whole perimeter of the lake. We identified what we call priority zones. based on the time that we do have available with them on the lake. Part of the criteria was, we call it a priority zone. If you go up into the Eastern Cove, it's just huge, dense material. It's actually right up by Larry's house, that it would be next to impossible for individuals to try to remove on a volunteer basis. So that right there is a hands down a priority number one. A low priority would be an area that if I go over there with a rake, I can physically do it myself in 15 or 20 minutes. I don't want to take the company's time to try to remove that. And there's a whole bunch of stuff in between that. That being said, we identified 7 different priority areas that we went over with the company. They totally agreed. We did the identification of laydown areas. And again, since we only have 2 days, what we have to do is minimize the time and distance. When they physically pick the material up, if they have to travel 15, 20 minutes to offload it every time, that's a lot of time if you start integrating it over the number of times they got to do it. So we're trying to stage everything using Reserve 2 will be the primary dump location to offload it for that. And then we worked around the lake and tried to help identify the other areas. A couple other points of note is we're going to get the floating mats. In addition to that, the island over by, on the, I guess it would be called the south side of the lake, that right now the water, there's normally an inlet that goes through that's completely blocked shut right now with vegetation, which is rooted vegetation. We're going to take that on to also have that cleared out so we can open that pathway out so it's no longer stagnant to get more flow through that area. And there's another area but this little island where the telephone utility pole is located. We'll address that. And then we're also going to go up into the boat launch area and try to clear some of that. Right now, the date to start the work, I don't have an exact date, but it looks like it's going to be pushed until next week. We'll confirm that and we'll communicate that out to everybody. When they are on the lake doing the work, the beach can be open, provided there's nobody within immediate proximity doing work in that area. We do request, and Erica and I will issue a communication out that when they're on the lake, stay clear of those areas. Don't be following around trying to watch what they're doing. That's just risk of potential injury. So we'll get that out. And again, the expected timeline, we only have 2 days to do this. So we're going to try to get as much possibly done as we can, bang for the buck, if you will, in those 2 days. If we don't get to your physical location, we will put volunteer efforts together if it's deemed necessary to come out and try to clear those areas also. The other part then is once we get the stuff off of the lake, we have to do something with it, obviously. It's going to right now be staged on the reserves, which would be in this case Reserve 2, 3, and possibly 8 up at the boat launch. And then we're going to be working with our landscaper contract to have that physically picked up and removed from there. Anyone have that?
I reached out to Rossini Landscaping and they're going to help us to do that. That being said, they do charge by the ton to get rid of it. The transfer station does. So obviously the vegetation when it is wet weighs a lot more. So if you see it and it's sitting there for a couple of days, that's the reason why we're going to try to let it dry out as much as possible so it saves on the expense of disposal. So it's not being left there for good. The intention is to move it. It's just we want it to dry out a little so we don't have to pay for them to move water.
Exactly good. And the second part kind of lends itself right into this. We call it rooted. The first part is floating vegetation. The second part will be rooted vegetation. There is some beneficial rooted vegetation like the cattails, which have taken over a lot of the areas of the lake right now. They're beneficial on one side, but they can also be detrimental on the other side. You really got to work with people who know what they're talking about to figure out what you really need to do with it. And the other part is it does, if you're a homeowner, a lakefront homeowner specifically, it dramatically impacts your view. You can no longer even see the lake because the cattails are that high and you can't actually get to the lake from your property. So in those cases right there, we are going to work with the homeowners as well as Solitude and DPW to start clearing those areas. As part of our prioritization, we identified a couple areas we're going to go after. But in addition to that, we actually have to go out for another separate contract. This first contract is to remove the floating, and we'll address what we can. The second part is going to be addressing the rooted vegetation, and then we'll get the company out very similar to the way we're doing this. It's going to take some time to get to that. And ultimately, a lot of these areas where you see the rooted vegetation, the cattails, if you go back to 2017, the last time we had water in the lake, the cattails physically weren't there. This evolved since we've actually had the lake drained.
Yeah.
So that was that part of it. We will need a second contract to address that, like I said. So that's the vegetation removal. The next part is on lake treatments. Think of this in two buckets again. The first bucket is for 2021. The next one is for 2022. In 2021, we're not sure what we actually need to have done this year. Right now, if you look at the lake, it's incredibly clear, the water. I don't want to jinx this. There's no wood to knock on right now. We hope it stays that way. But nevertheless, we anticipate that we might need to do some herbicide treatment. So we want to try to get that lined up so we can deal with it if we need to. The scope of it, again, will be algicide only, not herbicide. We went out to bid on, got 3 companies to bid on it. 2 actually responded, so we're in the process of selecting that one company right now. We hope to have that in place probably within a month. And once we get that narrowed down to that company, we're actually going to ask them to run in parallel to work with the DEC to get the permit to save time on that aspect of it. So that's it for the 2021. 2022, that's going to be more of the bigger picture. We don't know what we need again, but we got to get a company on contract for that, and that'll be for algicide and herbicide treatments. We'll start that process here in September to start lining that up. In a perfect world, if we treated the lake right, if you think of it as prevention, detection, correction, and working with smart people like Tom Coral, that we don't want to, if we work on the prevention detection part of it really good, we don't have to get into this correction mode of actually having to do treatments. So if we can go upstream and find out where the problems are, that's ultimately where we want to be. That's more of a project associated with Lake Health Committee. So that is pretty much it for the lake treatments. Lake testing. So again, we'll talk about vegetation removal, lake treatments, then we're going to talk about testing. The process right now for selecting a company to do the lake testing right now, we're doing the Northeast Aquatics came out and they did a very in-depth study on our lake and they provided us a preliminary report. They did a lot of sampling on our lake. So they gave us some interim actions, which we are going to communicate out to the Lake Health Committee board members, and we're going to start rolling that out. Larry, you'll be part of that too. And they'll start taking proactive actions on that. There's still some of the sampling they did is going to take 6 weeks to get the results back, and I think we're getting really close to that. That should be coming up very soon, so that'll complete the actions associated with the Northeast Aquatic report. The next part is the C-slab process, and I'm going to let Fred talk about that for a minute.
We've had 3 of our samplings taking place. And of course, our thanks to Kevin, who's our captain.
So I'm going to back up a little bit for it. What does CSLAP stand for?
Citizens Lake.
Citizen State.
CLSAP, Statewide Lake Assessment Program.
Okay, perfect.
Citizens Statewide Lake Assessment Program. We had 8 samplings during the summer on a 2-week basis, every 2 weeks. We started in June, and we've just taken our 3rd sample this past Sunday. And in spite of a minor mess up with nice full-up, didn't return our box. We sent out the 3rd sample, the samples today. They get sent to a laboratory in Syracuse where they get analyzed. Unfortunately, we don't get the data very quickly. I've been in touch with the nice full head, Nancy Mueller, and asking her if we can obtain data as we go along, which has generally not been the case in the past. Even their website has nothing to indicate what the data would be. So I will keep in touch with her to see when the earliest we can get sample data, because again, there will be 8 samplings to take us pretty much through the whole summer. So that's pretty much it right now, but it's a single, as you may know, it's a single point sampling that's generally done at the deepest part of the lake, which is relatively close to the dam. Right now, it's been averaging about 26 feet at our sampling point. And what's interesting is the first sample, which we took in June, was incredibly clear. I mean, it was beautiful. You'd think we were up at Lake George. The next one, 2 weeks later, for whatever reason, there was a lot of particulate algae in the water, to the point where where did this come from? And it was just all over the area. I mean, it wasn't a mass like you think of the blue-green algae or cyanobacteria. It was literally particulate algae. This past Sunday, nowhere near as bad. Why? I don't know. Could be wind conditions, rain, temperature, all the above. So these are all things that are being measured. The clarity, we have a device where the clarity of the lake is measured. We have samplings both 1.5 meters from the bottom and 1.5 meters from the top. So you can get the chemical background of different, see how badly the lake is stratified.
So I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
The sampling that you said was less clear. Was that around the same time the lake was experiencing the HABs? Do you recall if that was in the same?
I think it was.
I think it was too.
I think it was. And in fact, there was such a short period of time, it was amazing.
Yeah.
I know we were down here with you when we were getting the training for this year's CSLAP, and all of a sudden we're seeing blue-green algae. I hate to use blue-green algae. They have harmful algal bacteria blooms in certain spots. I mean, not huge, but enough to be of concern. And then a couple of days later, they're gone. From what I understand of in my SPOLA, is this material is constantly in the lake. It isn't till there's certain conditions that will allow it to accumulate and become a mass and become, your HAB, your bloom. And it can be hazardous to people, for skin sensitivities or for animals because it gets on their fur, they lick their fur, bada bing, bada boom. Things happen.
So we can send out the links again that explain the HABs and the recommendations around them, but hopefully we stay how it has been most recently, because it really was only that 1 weekend.
It's been beautiful. I mean,
Here we go, knock on wood.
yeah.
So the next Lake Health Committee meeting will be held in person, July 22nd at 6:30 p.m. here at the building. So if you want to know more of the details about CSLAP or about any of the particulars that Wally discussed, please, if you want to be part of the Lake Health Committee and on that specific email list, I hate to inundate everybody with everything, but if you have a specific interest in Lake Health Committee, email bdlboard@gmail.com and let us know you want to be added to that list also. Did we want to move on to fish restocking in the interest of time?
Yes, in the interest of time, let's do it. I'm just going to touch very briefly on it. The last part on the Lake Health Committee would be fish restocking. We have, as everybody's aware, obviously we drained the lake, the fish went away with it. Right now, we have not done any restocking yet at this point, but myself, along with a lot of other residents, if you're fishing out there, you are starting to catch some largemouth bass and other fish already. So they're starting to naturally repopulate on their own. We do have a budget to restock. We have talked to Northeast Aquatics about recommendations of what they recommended. Initially, the recommendation was to hold off to allow the lake to reestablish itself. And we pressed them a little bit saying, hey, some of the residents, we really want to get this going sooner than later. They recognize that. And so we were talking about possibly doing a 25% restocking this year and 75% next year, do more of a phased approach. So we're not throwing money to the wind, if you will. There's one other aspect that was introduced to us by the county. We were on the phone with them last week. We have to recognize that the dam itself, although it is predominantly complete, there's a chance that they might have to do some drain down to do any repairs later on this year after the season's complete. And we don't know that for certain. So I want to get a stronger feel of what that means to us before we commit any money to restocking. So we've been working with the DPW on that aspect of it. And then the last part on that, we are working to establish a relationship with the local fishery for the restocking and get their insights on it. So Kevin Boyle and myself will be taking the lead to get that part done.
Thank you. Anything to add about fish restocking? Okay. So then The next topic is the lake elevation, which we've heard loud and clear from several residents via email. So we did talk to the DPW and ask for some clarification on the lake elevation, and I'm going to read exactly what was sent to us. It has been confirmed that the reconstructed spillway elevation for the dam rehabilitation has maintained the lake water surface the same as its previous water surface elevation and the elevation the lake community has experienced for the last 30 plus years. The spillway was reconstructed at the same elevation as the spot elevations on mapping from 1986, which also matches the elevation on the existing survey shots of the dam spillway, which were taken during the design of the dam rehabilitation project. So that being said, we heard the feedback loud and clear, and when you hear it from so many people, I'm inclined to think not so many people can be wrong. So we searched for, like, if the water is at the same elevation, what can be explaining the perception that it isn't? So a lot of the folks that had written into us were on the north side of the lake, and a couple by Reserve 2 northeasterly side of the lake. So those two areas are interesting because they're the areas that have the most cattails in them. And when Gene from Solitude came, what he explained is sometimes the cattails can actually cause sediment over time to increase in those areas. So there is a good possibility that the water is the same level, but the ground is a little bit higher, which would make the perception more shallow. So you have folks who have said, you know, I used to be able to put my kayak in here. Now I have to walk it out a little bit further for it to float. So the question is the water lower or is the ground a little bit higher? And we think that it may be a perception because of increased sediment. And I want to say eutrophication, but that's not the right word. Just the sediment's raising in the bottom of the lake. So this is the explanation that we believe. Does anybody have anything to add? Wally, do you have anything to add to that in particular? Because I know we've got a lot of questions on it.
Yeah, it's kind of a strange situation. Obviously, they tore the dam down, they rebuilt the dam. The spillway was at a certain height. Picture the lake as being a bowl. Water can't have various levels throughout it. If the water will seek its own level, it's going to be absolutely level across the whole lake. If the spillway is exactly at the same level, same height or elevation as it was with the last dam, the lake level has to be exactly the same. So what we got from the DPW is that 330.5 feet above sea level, which is dead on with what the previous dam was. And the only other marker I can give you, I'm actually a lakefront property owner, and I know exactly, I watched it incredibly close, and I know exactly where the water levels before we drain it. My particular property is dead on from where it was. So if we have two parts on the lake that shows that it's exactly where it was, we have to venture into what are the other explanations for those areas where it's not quite, it's perceptively not back to the same level. As Eric had pointed out, that it's in areas that are incredibly shallow to begin with, or like 1.5 to 2 to 3 feet of water. And you have a lot of cattails growing in it. Some of the cattails are not necessarily where water is coming in, but up in the northern area, they actually act as impedance as the stream would come in and sediment gets in there, and they impede the flow of the water so the sediment does build up. There's a possibility that could be why it's a perception that's actually shallow in these areas, like Erica said.
We do have a comment from Kevin and Sarah Phillips. Need to draw down the lake to clear the debris that have become submerged. So I will say, and I know that you guys are part of the Lake Health Committee, so we're going to talk more in depth about it, but drawdowns are one of the things that we are considering in the future, and we have to get a DEC permit, and there's a particular time of year that we have to do it, where a drawdown would be beneficial because it would pull from the bottom of the lake, number one, so it could get rid of a lot of those excess nutrients that we have at the bottom of our lake. And also it would allow lakefront property owners to clear some of what's there. So did you have anything you wanted to add? So I know that wasn't specifically on the agenda, more focused on the Lake Health Committee, but.
You said it well. Yeah, but basically drawdowns of the lake are a good thing to do. I did talk to the DEC. Greenwood Lake, Orange Lake, they do it frequently, not a couple times a year, but like a couple times every year, like about 3 or 4 years. There's very specific criteria when you do it, and it's actually healthy for the lake to do that. We now have the functional capability of doing that with our sluice gates, so we are working with the DPW and the DEC to do that. When you do it, you are going to do it in the winter months or towards the probably November timeframe. And when you do the drawdown, you're only going to be able to do it for a couple of weeks. And the reason for that is so you don't disrupt the wildlife habitat out in the lake. If you start drawing down too soon, the animals or the turtles or the frogs, they start saying, hey, what happened to my water? And they start looking for a new place to go. So there's very prescriptive criteria. It's good for a couple of reasons. It kills off all of the vegetation in the shallow areas because it freezes it. And the other part is it allows anybody that's lakefront property owner to do repairs to docks or clean up their property lines. That's about it.
Great, thank you. Allison, I see your comment. If we do draw down this winter, how can we get permits to dredge out our lakefront area if it's no longer accessible for boats to launch? So I can chat with you offline a little bit, but we had worked with Mike Fratz at DEC, and there's a special permitting process that if you want to make alterations, you do have to go through with the Department of Environmental Conservation. So I can connect you and you can ask your questions directly to him, but keep the board in the loop. There may be some, some things you need to do for us also, but definitely requires DEC permission to do that. And thank you, Officer Bedetti. I see that you are logging off. Chris Dunn says we have had 2 years of decayed growth, fallen leaves from the trees collected, adding to the raised lake bed in the northern portion. Yeah, absolutely. So perceptively, it could be more shallow in that area. So if there's nothing to add further on lake elevation, or if you have other questions, you can certainly email me at bdl@gmail.com and we will get back to you. CSLAP we already talked about. And that brings us to the residents forum. I will mention that we got a call from a concerned resident who reached out with concerns about swimming at reserves beyond Reserve 4. These questions and concerns have been passed along to DPW and to the legal department, and I've contacted this resident directly and asked them to communicate their concerns and viewpoints in writing so it can be responded to formally. We will keep the community informed of any changes to the rules and regulations, but as it stands right now, Reserve 4 is our swim beach. Please use that for lake access. Any other board member comments before I toss it to resident questions and comments?
That's welcome, Larry.
Larry, you also got a lot of, hang on, I gotta go back and read them now. You also got a lot of welcome, thank you, congratulations.
Thank you.
On our online chat. He doesn't know what he got himself into, guys, but now it's official. Now it's official. He's one of us.
Just briefly, just for the purpose of coming up with solutions instead of just throwing problems out there. For me, in my area, I have 220 foot of lakefront, and I'll be honest, since the water came back, it's been very close to inaccessible for me. So I reached out to the board in a positive manner just to communicate so that could be put onto official record as one of the properties that could be addressed should we get the boats out there or get a cleanup going. But it's not the solution for everybody, but it was a solution for me and I was able to do it. So I went out, I put some boots on. I don't live in a very deep area and I was able to clear a nice lane for myself on my own. It took me about 90 minutes. I pulled the stuff up by hand. I brought it onto the shoreline on my property. I let it dry out. I put it into recycling buckets, and the garbage people from my district come by every other Wednesday and pick up yard waste, and it's gone, and that was it. So that solved my problem temporarily. Certainly, I have a lot more lakefront vegetation that could be taken care of, but for the essential needs of what I needed, I just took it upon myself to try to create a solution to a problem that a lot of people are having. I know that's not the answer for everybody, but in this world today, sometimes we got to take it upon ourselves to fix things when we can. Maybe it's not the perfect solution, but think creatively and understand that if you can take action without causing a problem for other people in the community, just do it. So that's all I'm saying is be a person of action. If you can have something in your control and fix something, of course, pass it along to people in the community and the lake board so that it can be addressed as part of the group. But hey, I just want it to be a person of action.
So what I'm hearing Larry say is that if you need help or advice about how to remove your cattails, you can reach out to the board and we'll send you to Larry and he will be of assistance to you.
Happy to help.
Alrighty. Are there any resident questions or concerns in the room since you all came down and decided to hang out with us?
You just need to get Larry's number out to all the other folks. I'm sure there's about 15 other lake residents that would love to have your phone number.
Oh, yeah.
You'll be busy for the rest of the summer.
So Tom Corl is officially offering Larry Weinberg's telephone number to the public. So we'll communicate that. Yeah.
Erica, I understand your depth perception, depth, but it just doesn't seem like the shoreline has come back to where it was before they drained it. You know, it's feet different. I mean, we're across the street, but we have the view, and we see where people had docks. And if the water level was up to their docks, the docks haven't moved, and there's no water. I know, you know, one house is vacant, the other people, they're in that cattail area, and they can't even see their docks. But before the cattails grew, and the water was there, you know, it just didn't seem to come out where it was before the drainage.
And that's down
And
right
then
across
it's like
Reserve too.
Over here, going out on the boat, on the fireboat, I think, if I remember correctly, it said water level 32 feet. We had a depth finder and it said 26 feet.
It's 26 feet.
It's 26
It is
feet.
26
Yeah.
feet. in the
But
center.
is that thing reading 32?
No, that's feet above sea level.
Yes.
What is it?
It actually says 330.5,
Ah,
and that's the demarcation associated with the relevance to sea level.
so I figured maybe, you know, somebody was doing a switcheroo and they were saying, oh, no. And it coincides with, I agree with that because the water wasn't where it was before.
I'd have to say the same thing. My sense is that the shoreline of my property is out a little bit further. You know, I've pulled kayaks just a little bit further. And I know that the lake level, you know, changes quite a bit with respect to the rainfall and, you know, et cetera. So, and in other words, I've seen it rise a good, you know, foot and a half sometimes under heavy rainfall.
Oh, absolutely.
So that my dock is almost submerged at that. But in my particular area, it does appear that the shoreline has moved out maybe about 6 inches or so. That doesn't mean that the lake level is, I'm just saying the shoreline itself moved out 6 inches. That could have been, you know, 2 inches worth of difference. And it could be, again, the rain. I don't see it right now because we've got a fair amount of rain in the summertime. But it's just not, in my mind, not exactly where
Interesting.
the shoreline.
You're not alone. A lot of people are actually
Yeah.
seeing it and saying the same thing. That's why we put a little bit more of a vested interest into it.
But
And I can't explain
I
it.
can't explain it, nor do I have, you know, measurements that can say, yeah, you need to go right here.
Yeah, we have a floating dock with stairs on it, which when we built it when the lake was right at the top of the spillway. So we built it so the stairs would match up with our fixed dock on the top, so it becomes a fixed mark. That is dead on right now.
Okay.
So.
Well, the moon's helping me out.
Yeah. If we get enough people swimming in the lake, through the volumetric displacement, it'll actually increase the level.
I will float Phil out.
Thank you for that. Are there any comments from, in the 16 years that we have had a view from our lakefront, there was more activity in June this year than any previous June. This has to be very gratifying to all those involved in bringing the dam project to completion. Thank you so much. Thank you. We're very excited to have the beach open and people out on the lake using it. We're thrilled. And
nice to see life,
thank you
for
so
sure.
much for your patience and your understanding with all of our ups and downs through it all. So it's been great.
And it's not just about the board members, it's actually about the residents really making a difference. No, people aren't complaining, they're actually coming through with ideas and solutions and like putting the muscle and the manpower behind it to make a difference. So
Yeah.
it's a community thing, not so much a board thing.
Absolutely.
I would say that the board composition made a larger impact on that. And the willingness of the board to take constructive or, input from the community allows the community to do it. So if you transition from a board that didn't want anybody else's opinion to a board that is willing to take that and act upon it, that makes the difference. It's you guys. I mean, we're the same people out here.
Thank you so much. And also, to that point, I know that I've seen some efforts to try and organize some specific resident events down at the beach area. For example, my parents have suggested toddler time. I think I heard buzzings of like a senior coffee hour, things like that. We would love to help residents who are interested in organizing those things for other residents. So if you want to, email us. We're happy to help you advertise those things and send them out via email so that you can connect with your neighbors too. So don't be shy about those types of things. We're happy to assist in any way that we can. Any other resident concerns or questions? All right, hearing nothing else. Any other board concerns or questions? Okay, going once, going twice.
Motion to adjourn.
And I'll second it.
All in favor?
I got a grandbaby on the way, so.
Yes.
Woo! All right, everybody
Thank you,
cross your
everyone.
fingers for Wally's family. Thank you guys. Have a great night.
Have a great night. Coming down, by the way.